Some of the most insightful futurists admit that we may have hard times ahead, but positive outcomes are possible, and they can emerge from these challenges. Let's consider what visionaries such as Edgar Cayce have predicted for our world.
The signs of change are all around us, but what does it mean? How do we make sense of what looks like random, bewildering change? Prophets have long tried to see into the beginnings of the 21st century. 400 years ago, the physician and clairvoyant Nostradamus predicted cataclysmic changes for our era. More recently, other prophecies have gained worldwide notoriety, in part because they sometimes contain equally scary images of what may be in store for us. These were the prophecies of the clairvoyant Edgar Cayce. Cayce would lie in a self-induced trance from which he gained access to inspirational insights and wisdom. It was during these times that he attempted to see the future and spoke of many possible changes. Major earthquake destruction in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Severe earthquakes and flooding in Japan, causing large portions of that nation to be lost. Permanent coastline changes for parts of Alabama and the Carolinas. New lands emerging in what is now the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Tremendous weather changes, such as temperate areas becoming tropical. But these are not the only futuristic images Cayce offered. Other prophecies involve the nations of the world, some of them in a very hopeful way. Once freedom is reestablished in Russia, it could become the hope of the world, especially out of its friendship with America, a process already unfolding since 1989. China possibly becoming the cradle of Christianity, or at least a natural home for living Christ-like principles in daily life. In spite of Cayce's predictions of widespread destruction, his most basic prophecy for the new millennium carries with it a message of hope. The transition into the new millennium may be a difficult initiation process, but it is not without purpose. These difficulties will force humankind to find new ways to cooperate. It is this cooperation that will have a positive impact on our future and our world.
Each day we make new decisions about how we'll treat nature and others around us. If thousands of people catch a hopeful vision of what the world can really be, the impact of their actions will ripple throughout the world. Prophecies aren't necessarily written in stone. We do have the ability to control our destiny.
When people talk of the word prophet, they mean different things. Certainly one of the ideas of a prophet is somebody who in biblical times had a direct channel to God. And this certainly goes all the way back to the beginning of the Old Testament. When people talk about Edgar Cayce as a prophet, they're in a sense making a misstatement, because he never claimed to have a perfect channel to anything, but instead said, always test everything in your own experience. When you're trying to understand prophecies, what you find is that there are often two opposing approaches. One is to say they are cast in concrete, and that the prophecies are going to come true, and there's nothing you can do about them. And the other is to see them as potential warnings telling you, if you continue on the same course, then these things are going to happen, and you may need to change course. So if you have a prophecy that says, if you don't get your act together, there's going to be this disaster, in the Edgar Cayce readings, there's usually an opportunity to get your act together to do something that would tend to avert that disaster. So when he made his occasional statements about things going on in the outer world, it was often couched in terms of, if you continue with this way of acting, then this sort of thing will happen. Well, one question that often arises is, can you do anything positive with a negative prophecy? So that if there is a prophecy that there will be a big disaster, the question would be, is there anything you can do with this? And sometimes the tendency is to just say, well, if a big disaster is coming, then I think I'll move away from the California seacoast and buy up beachfront property in Nevada. That's probably not the best way to respond to these things. That often the question is, what could you do to make the world a better place at this time? And that was often Edgar Cayce's angle on it, that he was saying, here are things that could go wrong, but there are many things that you could do. You could work on taking care of buying a farm, for example. He told people if there were going to be big disasters, why not buy a farm and learn to raise your own food instead of just sitting there waiting for the disaster to happen. So he always recommended things that people could do to improve their lives and the world around them.